Americans need to hear this. In Mexico, you're not always seen as the fun guest. A lot of times you're seen as the most annoying, arrogant, and disrespectful visitor that steps off the plane, even if you personally don't deserve it. Ask some Mexicans and they'll tell you, Americans treat Mexico like it's their playground, their cheap getaway, and a country that they can step on without even thinking. And that's exactly what this video is about. It's 10 reasons why Mexicans are tired of American tourists. So number one, they call themselves Americans. People from the U.S. show up in Mexico, and when they're asked where they're from, they say America. But that's when the eyes start rolling. Because in Mexico, the word America doesn't just mean the USA. It means the entire continent. Entire continent from Canada to Argentina and everything in between. When US tourists say that they're American, Mexicans feel like nobody else matters. They're just disregarded. But the worst thing you can do is start arguing back with people. Usually people will say like, well, you know what it means. And really it's kind of like saying, I get the last cookie because it's mine, because everybody knows it. This tactic might work in kindergarten, but it doesn't work when you're talking about an entire continent. For Mexicans, this isn't just a word game. It's about respect, pride, and who gets to claim the label for the entire continent. Just think of it like this. They've had outsiders trying to conquer their country for centuries. So when someone shows up casually and says, I'm from America, it kind of hits a nerve. And I completely get it. Here's the thing though, it's not hard to be respectful. Even if someone corrects you about the word America, you can just say, okay, agree to disagree, and just move on. You don't have to agree with them. They don't have to agree with you. You don't have to debate it either. And doing all that, you're just letting your ego get in the way. So don't let it get in the way, especially when you're in someone else's country. You don't have to see eye to eye with everybody on everything. But kindness goes a long way. If you can't handle being respectful in simple conversations, maybe traveling here isn't the right thing for you. Number two, treating Mexicans like they're beneath them. There's a few things that get under the people's skin here, and that's Americans acting like Mexicans are their personal staff. It shows up in little ways like snapping their fingers at waiters, trying to rush taxi drivers, or talking down to store clerks, or pretty much anybody. The attitude says, I'm the boss and I know better, and you're the help. And this behavior isn't limited to restaurants. Some Americans treat housekeepers, drivers, or tour guides like they're background extras in their vacation movie. And while most visitors will never admit it, the body language says everything. Ignoring greetings, refusing to make eye contact, or acting annoyed if a local doesn't speak English perfectly. Let's not mention if someone isn't getting something done fast enough that it should be. The irony is that Mexicans pride themselves on hospitality. Most Mexicans will bend over backwards to make the visitors feel welcome. So when that effort's met with straight up ignorance, it hurts. And it's just plain rude. Some Mexicans even say in my comments that we treat you like family and you treat us like employees. It's not good. Now, would you call out a tourist acting this way, or would you let them embarrass themselves? Because to local people, the problem isn't Americans visiting. It's when visitors forget that they're actual guests to this country and start acting like they own the place. Number three, trying to change Mexican food. Nothing makes Mexicans sigh louder than Americans marching into Mexico and trying to rewrite the menu. Tourists probably show up at taco stands asking for hard-shell tacos, yellow cheese, extra mild salsa. Like real Mexican food should taste like the Mexican food back home. The food issue gets even funnier when Americans brag about their hometown Mexican spot being more authentic. Imagine going to a place like Oaxaca, which is basically food heaven, and saying these tacos are not as good as the ones back home. The truth is, Mexican food is built on traditions that go back thousands of years. From the corn, beans, chili, to even the chocolate. These aren't just ingredients for food. They're ingredients of the culture. When tourists demand changes, it feels like they're saying that centuries of cooking here, it's not good enough. And apparently, Americans keep trying. They really keep trying to change the food. I mean, if you want Taco Bell, stay in the US. Number four, wearing swimsuits everywhere. Mexicans know that the beachwear belongs at the beach. And Americans and some other foreigners, not so much. They don't know this. There's tourists that wander through grocery stores shirtless, sit down at taco stands in bikinis, and walk down the street like they're starring in a swimsuit commercial. For Mexicans, it's not just awkward, it's kind of disrespectful. The issue isn't that swimsuits are offensive, it's that Mexico has a strong culture of modesty, especially outside of beach zones. Families bring kids to restaurants, people gather in plazas, and somebody walking around half naked just feels out of place. It screams, I'm a tourist, and I don't really care. And I don't think that's a vibe that any of you want to give off. So just be mindful of that. Unless your goal is to become the main character of an online rant, a shirt and a little bit of research about the local culture, it definitely goes a long way. So just look into it before you travel anywhere, because there's other countries around the world that feel this way too. Number 5, saying that all Latinos are the same. First, we're going to go over this. People in the US are often categorized like Latinos or Hispanics to group Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Colombians, etc. Everybody together, mostly for demographics, politics, or media representation. Now, I don't think this word is politically correct. I don't think Mexicans even like this word to be used for them. That's the first thing. The other is saying, well, you're basically all the same. That's another problem, right? Because it's not even close. Mexico is not Colombia. Guatemala is not Argentina. And saying that for me is like pointing at a Canadian and calling them a Texan. There's no way any Canadian would like that. Some Americans lump entire continents together under one word. And for Mexicans, it's not just an innocent mistake. It feels like their whole identity is being erased. And it feels that way for a good reason. This comes up every time people talk about the border. A lot of people act like it's only Mexicans coming over the border or going over the border to the USA. And they act like all the people crossing the border are the same type of people. But that's just not reality. The people crossing at the border illegally, you see all different kinds of people there. People from Central America, South America, and yeah, even as far as China or Africa. It's not just one group. It's a big mix of people. But what Americans and other people love to do is clump everybody together because it's just easier that way to direct the narrative when there is a narrative. And a lot of times there is one. So just be careful of what you say. The truth is that North, Central, and South America is a patchwork of cultures, languages, and traditions. Saying everyone is the same is like saying French, Germans, and Italians are the same, just because they live in Europe. Number 6, spending dollars and driving up prices. One of the biggest frustrations that I hear from Mexicans in my comments is with American tourists and money, specifically how they spend US dollars here and not Mexican pesos. In beach towns, visitors hand over bills like it's normal. They hand over US bills like it's nothing. Vendors and restaurants and other places accept them. Of course they do. But the ripple effect over time is pretty ugly. Prices go up, and suddenly the people that live in Mexico are paying more for tacos, taxis, and even rent. Picture this. You go and grab tacos for like 40 pesos, right? Like 3, 4, 5 tacos. It depends where you are. But then a tourist strolls in and drops a $5 bill and waves off the change. For the vendor, it's tempting to adjust prices to match the gringo's wallet. And by tomorrow, that same taco stand could be charging double the price for its tacos. And what happens is that the people that live there, that are from there, they end up having to pay these prices too. And what adds fuel to the fire is tipping at restaurants. What I hear is that even tips are causing problems at like restaurants and stuff like that. Many Americans sometimes tip way more than they should, or that a local person would, thinking they're being generous. I've heard this many times in my comments. But when those restaurants and bars get used to oversized tips, it will raise expectation. I mean, it's a good thing that people are getting more money, but everything around it starts to inflate, and it starts to strain the local people that can't match these dollars. And what feels like generosity to you can feel like inflation for everybody else that lives there. For Mexicans, I don't think the issue is rejecting tourists, because there's large economies inside Mexico that rely on tourists. When Americans insist in paying in dollars and tipping like they're in Las Vegas, the real cost isn't pesos. The real cost ends up being resentment. And I see a lot of it in my comments. Number 7, acting shocked about safety. Americans land in Mexico and instantly treat every neighborhood like it's some type of crime scene. They clutch your bag, they comment about cartels, and they ask locals questions like, is it safe to walk outside right now? Meanwhile, it's like 2 in the afternoon. Kids are literally playing outside in the streets. To Mexicans, this isn't just insulting, but it's also hilarious. The idea that Americans have about Mexico, it's just too funny. It's like visiting New York City and seeing a hot dog cart and asking the vendor if it's safe to buy food without getting robbed. The locals just can't help but laugh, because the paranoia says more about the tourists than it really does about Mexico. Of course, crime exists in Mexico. And for majority of the places in Mexico, it's just normal everyday life. And I think what Mexicans will tell you, and what I'll tell you, is if you're too scared to come, maybe don't visit. The funniest part to me is how selective the fear can actually be. Some Americans avoid neighborhoods but have no problem getting blackout drunk at a tourist bar. And for me, the math doesn't add up at all. So here's the question. If you want to visit Mexico, do you want to see a country for what it is or for what a Netflix crime show shows you and told you what it is? Because if you keep acting shocked about safety in places where families live and they live normal everyday lives, the only real danger is being roasted by locals or me. Number 8, littering at beaches and resorts. Nothing kills the beauty of Mexico beaches faster than trash left behind by tourists. Americans pack coolers of beers and drinks and they drink on the sand by the beach and then leave cans, cigarette butts, plastic cups, like the ocean is one gigantic trash can. Now, it's not everybody doing this, but it's super messy and disrespectful. And it's disrespectful to nature and those people that depend on tourism, that work hard to make a little bit of money to survive and feed their family. Kids running barefoot in the sand step on bottle caps. Families setting up picnics find plastic bags blowing into their food. For people who live here, the beach isn't just a vacation spot. It's part of everyday life for them. And seeing that people are leaving trash feels like those people that leave the trash are just stomping through their home. What makes it sting even more is that many Americans brag online how beautiful Mexican beaches are. But then they become the same ones that come here and leave everything behind, leave their empties and ruin the beach. For many Mexicans, beaches are sacred. Every can or plastic cup left behind isn't just ugly. Sea turtles choke, fish swallow plastic, and locals are stuck cleaning up the mess. So don't leave your cup with your drink that you had your drink in from your all-inclusive resort on the beach. Don't leave it on the beach. Throw it in the garbage can. Pick up after yourself, even if you think the hotel staff will come and pick it up for you. And just remember this the next time you're on a beach anywhere in the world. Because in the end, litter isn't just trash in the sand. It's a stain on how Americans are remembered long after they've flown home. Number 9, saying Mexican healthcare is dangerous. Some Americans warn each other, don't get sick in Mexico, the hospitals are dangerous. And if Mexican people hear this, they probably roll their eyes because millions of people here rely on Mexican healthcare every single day. And it works. The idea that it's unsafe comes from stereotypes. Actually had my son here. I didn't. My wife had my son here. And it was amazing. It was probably a lot cheaper than the US. There's amazing doctors here. While some Americans trash talk Mexican hospitals, thousands of Americans travel south every year on purpose for medical care. It's actually called medical tourism, and it's massive. People come for dental work, eye care, surgeries, and even big procedures like knee replacements, all because quality is solid here and the cost is just a fraction of what it would cost in the US. And of course, like anywhere, not every clinic is perfect. You definitely have to do your research and figure out where to go. Just like the US, there are good hospitals and bad ones, but painting the entire system as unsafe insults every Mexican doctor and nurse who keep their communities healthy every day. So next time someone says don't trust the Mexican healthcare, the truth is simple. Millions do, and many Americans already depend on it too. Number 10, bringing US politics into Mexico. One of the quickest ways to annoy Mexicans is when Americans show up and start flaunting their politics. They flaunt it like it's part of their vacation package. Visitors are actually wearing MAGA hats and t-shirts. They bring up debates that no one really wants to hear about, guns and walls, and act like Mexico is the perfect place to share their opinions. But I don't think most people care here. So leave your politics at home. You come to Mexico for beaches and tacos, not to campaign or support whoever you support. And the disrespect hits harder because of what those politics often mean. Many Mexicans know what MAGA stands for when it comes to Mexican people. And it's not very kind. It's actually pretty horrible. The idea of strolling through Mexico in gear linked to anti-Mexican ideas feels like rubbing salt in an open wound. And it tells them that we don't like you back home, but we're happy to enjoy your country, only when it suits us. Mexicans already have their own politics, their own debates, and their own challenges. They don't need outsiders bringing other arguments with them. They don't belong here. When an American shows up in a MAGA shirt or starts preaching about American laws, it doesn't just feel out of place. It feels like someone's trying to overshadow Mexican people in their own country. Of course, everybody has the right to their own opinion. I'm not saying you can't support what you want. That's fine. But when visitors flaunt US politics in Mexico where they don't belong, I'll say it. If Mexicans don't want to say it, I'll tell you now, because most Mexicans are too polite to tell you. It's just straight up disrespectful. Mexicans didn't invite the argument, and they don't need reminders of what Americans think about them, because they already have an idea in their head that you need to change soon. Maybe it's already too late. I don't know. So the next time you pack for a trip, leave the campaign gear at home. Mexico isn't the place to parade US politics. It's a country with its own culture, its own pride, and its own voice. Just leave them out of it. The world needs less of it. We already see the charades on TV in every country. In the end, how Americans act in Mexico just doesn't shape one vacation. It also shapes how locals see Americans who come afterwards. So I think you want to be remembered as a guest and remember it as somebody that the people here want to come back and visit. So if you want to learn some more things that Americans do that annoy local Mexican people, check out this video. It's a pretty good one. There's 10 more points on what annoys Mexicans. Check it out and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.